because of course that's what the iPhone 6s uses, is the A9. Moving right along, pretty much identically to the TSMC based A9. Well, you know, it's high school lunchtime when you got douchebags in a Ford Ranger that have no exhaust that like to drive over the speed limit past your house, going to Dairy Queen to sit in line for 30 minutes to get their food. So, yeah, they'll probably be around again. Money concerns, but that's okay with me. So, I guess that truck says it's time to transition into the next segment. Woohoo! It probably has muffled my sound already many times in this video. And I want it to muffle them trucks. That used to take ages to open. Holy why do you need to go 40 miles an hour in a 25 zone? Okay folks, Jordan here. Today's video, I wanted to do something a little more involved, and I may still do that later, depending on what happens, but I figured, at least for right now, I'd do something a little bit different than what I would normally do. Now, I don't normally do like product reviews and such, that's just not my forte. I might get into that later on when I have a little bit more experience into electronics and other stuff, that way I know what I'm talking about, and maybe I could do more open reviews like this one that probably won't take nearly as much time, but I don't know, it depends on what happens. So I figured today's video, since I need to be probably taking care of stuff here pretty soon with regards to my cellular device, I figured we'd take a look at it before I either replace it or change networks or whatever, just so I can give myself a little bit of a sort of a review, long-term ownership review of my phone. So this is an iPhone 6s in space gray. It's a 64 gig unlocked model. That's what the store I use, or the carrier I use, they sell unlocked models. This is obviously a US cellular powered iPhone 6s, since obviously that's the network we use around here. Now technically I could use AT&T, or I could use Verizon or T-Mobile or whatever, but I could care less. But I may think about changing networks in the future, just because the one we're on right now is quite expensive. It's just about as expensive as Verizon, and the service really isn't any better than Verizon, so I'll, whatever. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. Doesn't really matter what network I use, it's my business. So, anyway, iPhone 6s, 64 gig. My camera work's probably not going to be the best in this video because I normally use my iPhone 6s to record video because the screen is a little bit larger than the one I'm using right now, which is my backup phone, my iPhone SE, which I don't normally use the SE for making videos, although it has an identical camera to the 6s. I like the size of this better, and also the battery in this SE is really not that great because it is a third-party replacement battery, so much so that Apple is kind of sort of holding back performance on this thing, and it's, well, not this phone, this one, the one you're actually seeing the video from, and it makes it kind of difficult to want to, use this thing. Plus, of course, the viewfinder is a little bit smaller. So, I don't know, first world problems, I know. And I got a notification, so I need to clear that and clear the Facebook one, so that way I can have a clean lock screen for the most part. So, yeah. So I got this phone just over 2 years ago with my mother. She bought an iPhone 7 when it was new. In fact, get that in the center of the frame, you dummy. So yeah, she got an iPhone 7 when it was brand new. She had a 32 gig model. She bought me the 64 gig 6S because it was a clearance thing that they were having at the store. So I got this phone for probably roughly 150 to 200 off. I don't remember what it was. The total that I would need to spend on this phone to buy it outright would be about $600. So for a 64 gig that was a year old at the time, brand new, on a 2-year contract, that wasn't too bad. I could live with that. Considering that it's $18 a month for the device itself. So it wasn't too terribly bad, I suppose. And, keep in mind, this is when the iPhone 7 literally just came out, and they were trying to clear out all the 64 gig 6S models because the 32 gig 6S was about to come in. So I got a pretty good deal on this. At least I think I got a pretty good deal. And it certainly saved my mother a little bit of money over the course of a 2-year contract. So here we are. So, yeah. So I figured, I don't know what I'm going to do with this video. I just kind of wanted to talk about my experiences with the 6S as my daily driver phone, make some comparisons to my older phone, which I used for 2 years, which was an iPhone 5S, and kind of talk about my future plans with either this phone or maybe a new one. I'm not entirely sure. Just kind of get some rambling in because I wanted to get some rambling out. I figure the first big priority that we need to talk about is going to be the chip, because that's a pretty big deal. Now, when I got this phone, and I didn't know this, but when I had this phone, when it was new, I didn't know that this actually had the chipgate problem that used to be a really prolific thing that was in news headlines back when these were, just new. There was a thing called chipgate, and these had two separate SoCs. They were the same SoC, but they were made by two different chip manufacturers. One was Samsung, the other was TSMC. And my phone, the voice crack, my phone has the Samsung-based A9, because of course that's what the iPhone 6s uses, is the A9. Moving right along. God, I cannot make a video without some douchebag in a truck. Seriously. Anyway, as I was going to say, the TSMC-based A9 had some notable differences from the Samsung-based A9, mainly in heat and efficiency, because the Samsung A9, while it performs pretty much identically to the TSMC-based A9, well, it's high school lunchtime when you got douchebags in a Ford Ranger that have no exhaust that like to drive over the speed limit past your house, going to Dairy Queen to sit in line for 30 minutes to get their food. So, yeah, they'll probably be around again. So the Samsung A9 is what this phone has, and it is very hot running under load. And this used to be a big problem back in the iOS 11 days in particular, and I'll get into some other stuff in a minute about performance metrics and, the battery throttling thing, because I was affected by it, which was very annoying. So anyway, I got this phone. I think when I got it, it was running iOS 9.3. I, at the time, was running iOS 10.0.1, I think it was, on my 5S. It could have been 10.0.3. I don't remember what I was running on my iPhone 5S at the time, but I upgraded my 6S to iOS 10 because new phone, new OS, new experience. Why not? I was actually liking iOS 10 very much on my 5S. It was running pretty well for what it was. It was starting to show its age, no doubt, but it was still pretty usable. I could get by on it if I had to use the 5S for a little while longer. And anyway, I obviously upgraded to this, and I got by with it. And iOS 10 on this thing was fast. It was lovely. Beautiful performance. Everything just was great. Lovely device. Touch ID was very fast on it too. So this is something that I loved about this phone, was the faster Touch ID, because I could never make Touch ID work on my 5S. It rarely worked. And even if it did, it just never worked. So, and one thing, I can actually swap my hands, and I kind of have a problem like Talos of Tech where my fingers, they just don't work with Touch ID, because this thumb is assigned and yet it's not working. But here's this other thumb. Guess what? First try, boom, unlocks. Kind of annoying. So I'm really looking forward to eventually upgrading to something with a Face ID system, because I can't do Touch ID unless, my fingers are like perfect. And even then it doesn't work, because I have oily hands. I have skins that always changing. Something in the family, I don't really know. I couldn't tell you. But, I think Face ID is going to be a notable improvement over Touch ID for me, at least. I'm not so sure for other people, but I would appreciate the change. And, obviously, I don't know if I'm going to go for an iPhone XR or XS when I upgrade. That's in debate. Probably more the XR than the XS due to money concerns, but that's okay with me. So, I guess that truck says it's time to transition into the next segment. Woohoo! So because of the fact this has a Samsung-based A9 in it, the battery life has been mixed. And I wanted to emphasize battery life in particular, because obviously that's one thing you want to know about when you're talking about a smartphone in particular, rather than, going into other stuff that is important, yes, but battery life is a pretty big, important step. And over the course of my ownership with this phone, the battery life and necessarily the battery health, because that's another big deal that happened during the iOS 11 days, ended up being a real big problem, and I was affected by this. So obviously I don't have the 6S Plus, I just have the regular 6S. So the battery is very small, and it doesn't help that the Taptic engine takes up space, and obviously the chip's a little more efficient, yes, in theory, but the Samsung-based A9 is not really that great in efficiency, and I think the fact that all the heat output from that chip probably helped to degrade the battery. So when iOS 11 came out, and shortly after that they started doing that battery throttling bullshit that they did, and my phone was really bad. Like, for example, we'll just say, I'll go open up YouTube, we'll see if there's something open real quick. I don't want it to show on the camera just in case. It's not like it really matters because, obviously YouTube. So let's say I would be watching a video. I'm not going to obviously watch one because I don't want audio coming out. But I would press home, and it would there'd be no animation. There would be absolutely no animation, and it would be hot. It would run hot when playing YouTube. That's not good. So that was one thing that I noticed was wrong. It was pushing way too much power out of the SoC to play YouTube. So that didn't help with the performance problems. And not only that, I would go to swipe home screens to go open Discord, for example, and it was this big stuttering mess. It was annoying, and it made my phone practically unusable at times because it just couldn't do it. And keep in mind that this was with no low power mode on, and my battery was probably be at a percentage, roughly 50%, something like that. I don't know. It's obviously not there right now, and obviously I'm not going to be able to repeat the symptoms because I'm no longer running an older iOS 11 version, but you get my point. So it was bad, and luckily I had Apple Care on this phone, so I was actually able to get the battery replaced for free, which thank God I was able to do that. I didn't mind if I had to pay $29 for a battery replacement. That wasn't really my big concern, but I just wanted to get it replaced, and luckily I did it when I did because they were actually running out of supply on the 6S batteries. So, the 6S Plus at the time when I was getting this replaced had already sold out of batteries, so that was really insane at the time because everybody tried to replace their batteries because of all this stupid battery throttling scandal. And honestly, I'm probably going to have to do it again because if I come down here to battery and go to battery health, this battery is not a year old, and I'm already down to 90%. This is ridiculous. And it was at 91% like a couple of weeks ago. And, a couple of weeks ago before that, it was at 93. So something is wrong with this particular battery. I think I got a fluke. And that's really stupid. So I'm probably going to have to replace my battery yet again. And that's probably going to cost me $29. I'll have to contact Apple about that. I think my phone just went out of warranty about a couple weeks ago. So I might have to replace that out of pocket. Again, I don't really care too much because $29 isn't too bad for a battery replacement, and I ought to do the same thing with my SE, but I especially need to do it for this phone because a battery should not be degrading this fast. I mean, I use my phone for quite a lot, but I don't think it should have been degrading its capacity 10% in less than a year. Less than a year, and it's already degrading badly. So that just speaks volumes for the Samsung A9 chip in this phone. That's how inefficient it is. And I'd be lucky to get a day out of this phone, if even that, because a lot of the times when I was using this phone in school, for example, I would have no battery percentage before lunchtime. I'm serious. It was bad. And that was if I was lightly using this phone. Light usage, and it would die before lunch. It was ridiculous. And that was especially in the days of, early iOS 11 when it was very inefficient, and that's what causes YouTube to run hot, for example, we'll say. So it was a very big deal, and it was, yeah. I'm glad I got my battery replaced when I did, but I'm seriously not looking forward to doing it again because what the hell? Honestly, I have no words for that. Luckily, I'm not getting throttled. That's good, I guess, because I have a genuine Apple battery. It detects that I'm under peak load, but really 10% degradation in under a year. Come on. That I must have a fluked battery or something. It should not be degrading that fast. One of the many reasons I picked the 6S is because the camera on it, well, it's not the greatest. It's pretty good for the price, and given how it's held up pretty well over time for the most part, I'm obviously using an iPhone SE right now to record, so you're looking at exactly what I'm looking at through the 6S viewfinder, except you're watching in 60 FPS rather than 30 FPS here on the 6S. This thing is held up surprisingly well. And I really like the output from this camera. I don't like the audio so much, so I'm really looking forward to a new phone so I can get the stereo audio recording, finally. But you know, as long as I tweak it in iMovie, it's fine. It tends to sound pretty good. It does tend to muffle my sound quite a bit, though, and I think that's probably due to the case, because the microphone on the rear uses that mic, but it uses this mic if you're using it on the front. So it tends to muffle your sound quite a bit when you're using the rear camera and you're trying to speak. It probably has muffled my sound already many times in this video. And I want it to muffle them trucks. So another thing that's been really nice is iOS 12. Now, I ran the betas on this phone back when the betas were a thing, and honestly, it's been nice to have, because this phone, it was alright on iOS 11, and I could get by with it. But yeah, it seriously made a difference on iOS 12. It just makes everything so much faster. Look, I don't want to open up any apps because I don't want to reveal any personal information, but I guess we can open up, like, what can I open up that really won't get me shamed? I suppose the App Store. This used to take quite a while to open up, and you'd be stuck on a loading screen for like ever and ever, and now it pretty much opens almost instantaneously. And I don't even use Files, so I can open that up, and that opens up pretty much instantly. That used to take quite a while. Calculator used to take a good long while to open up, and in particular my shopping list app, AnyList, this used to take quite a while. It still kind of does, but needless to say, it opens up a little bit faster. And then you got eBay here. eBay used to take a good long time. It still kind of does, but it still is a little bit notable of an improvement. Facebook was the biggest improvement because that used to take ages to open. Holy why do you need to go 40 miles an hour in a 25 zone? I honestly don't know how fast he was going, but I obviously know he was going way over the speed limit. And that's the kind of douchebaggery we have in our neighborhood. So, don't mind me if I vent a little bit more in these videos. I get fed up with it. I really do. And it doesn't help that there's a school zone that's going on, and I think he just realized it because he slowed right down. I think he deserves a speeding ticket and a noise violation ticket, because that's just stupid. Well, maybe less on the noise violation side, because that's technically legal, but more on the speeding ticket, because that's just stupid. I need to get a police officer around here and just start monitoring the neighborhood. It's just ridiculous, the idiots we have around here. Of course, they won't do it in front of a police officer because they know they get a ticket, but God, especially at nighttime, I'm going to vent on this a little bit, especially at nighttime, they come flying past our house. It's so loud. It wakes up pretty much the whole neighborhood. It's annoying. I get it. It's high schoolers. They don't know any better, but my God, seriously, they need more tickets than what I think they're worth. It's aggravating. Anyway, I'll shut up now, because that's a first world problem. So, anyway. So, I don't know what else to really talk about when it comes to this phone. The performance has held up pretty well over time. And in fact, given iOS 12, I could probably still use this phone for another year if I had to. And if that's the case, then that's absolutely fine. I could totally use this thing for another year, no problem. It's just that I'd like an upgrade if I can, because obviously this phone's got really horrible battery life. In fact, it's been down battery life ever since I've just been sitting here doing nothing with it. So that's a big problem, and I've always had this problem with this phone. It's just something I've had to live with. Every 6S owner will tell you that, especially ones with the Samsung-based A9 will tell you that. So it's been pretty frustrating having to deal with this over a 2-year contract, but I've done it, I've made it, and overall, I'm pretty happy with this phone and how it's held up over the years. It's been very durable. The camera's held up surprisingly nicely. In fact, obviously, again, I'm using one to record this video. It's nice to have had an aux jack, although that's not a real big priority anymore. The only place I would really need that would be my truck, since it doesn't have Bluetooth audio. But then again, I could always buy a dongle if I really need to have the headphone jack. And honestly, that's really not the end of the world anyway, because my headphones are Bluetooth. So I'm not really in that state where I'm totally left in the dark because there's no dongle in the box. I do have Bluetooth headphones, so yeah, anyway. And the speaker's been pretty good. It's not nearly as good as the stereo sound as the newer ones, but it's been pretty good. Fairly loud, and it does tend to distort at higher volumes, so that's definitely a thing. But otherwise, it's been pretty nice. And I've had to get the display replaced on this, and it's obviously not going to show because I've had it replaced, but there used to be a little poke mark inside my screen. There was an internal defect. And another thing that I noticed was this backlight was a little bit dim on the left side. So I might have had a fluke display or something happen, because my phone actually is bent. I actually was able to somehow manage to bend a 6S. Now, it's not impossible, but I don't even know how I did it. My only hypothesis for this is because when I was in high school, I would have to use this in my back pockets because my regular front pockets were not big enough to hold this phone in the case. I had to get this case replaced, the rubber part at least, because it wore off over time. But anyway, so yeah, somehow I think that managed to bend the phone because there's a kink by the volume down button, and that's it. So I don't know if that managed to cause the internal defect in the screen right around in this area, although that's completely separate where the bend is, so I'm not entirely sure. And then I'm not sure what caused this backlight to dim over time. It was weird. So, and there's no liquid damage. This phone has never been liquid damaged. I've never done anything abusive to this phone. I've just used it, so I don't know. So yeah, I got the display replaced at the same time I got my battery replaced for the first time. The display itself has been fine otherwise. I haven't had any responsiveness issues because this is a genuine Apple screen, of course. And it's been looking great. So yeah, I don't know. So overall, I've had a pretty good 2 years with my iPhone 6S, even though I do kind of harp on it every now and again about really terrible battery life because I have problems still with the battery where, you know, let's just say I get done doing a live stream, for example. Like, this was just yesterday. I was doing a live stream, and I forgot to plug my phone in when I was live streaming. Oh, well. The phone was extremely hot when I got done with it, which is to no surprise because my phone always runs hot after doing a live stream, especially a long one. And I think the phone was at like 18% when I stopped streaming. Okay, so no big deal. 18%, go plug it in. I left it sit for a little while with low power mode on after I got done streaming, so it would cool down and whatnot and settle down and everything. And then I went to go play some more Xbox. I swear, not even like 20 minutes later, and I come back to this thing, and it was at 5% on low power mode after stopping a live stream at 18%, doing absolutely nothing. And it drained that much percentage doing nothing? Like, come on. That's the kind of stupid battery behavior I've had with this phone. And then I've had random issues on this replacement battery where it would die at 6% and not turn back on. Although the phone itself would try to turn back on at 6% because, of course, it thinks it has 6%. But it would just turn off immediately thereafter. And it was very annoying because I couldn't charge my phone without the stupid thing turning back on and reporting that it had more battery percentage than it actually probably had. So I had to recalibrate the battery on this thing just recently, actually, which was really annoying because I've had to do that several times. So this battery goes out of calibration a lot, and so it dies at the most inopportune of times at random percentages. It has problems where it like dips 20% in battery charge over a span of a few minutes after doing absolutely nothing with the phone. It just stupid little things like this that really get on my nerves that I've had problems over time with. That I keep having to recalibrate the battery, which is just aggravating. So that's my biggest gripe, is the battery keeps going out of calibration and I have to keep fiddling with it, and then the battery life is inconsistent. It dies at random times. Like, I've even had problems where it sits on 1% or something for like 15 minutes before it finally shuts off or something stupid like that. Or it sits at some random battery percentage for like 11 minutes before it finally starts discharging again. So just random quirks like that really have bugged me. And I suppose one thing we could do, since I'm sitting here blabbing in front of the camera, I haven't actually done a Geekbench in a little while. Or maybe I have. See, this was my last Geekbench score, and I figure we'll compare it here. This was on 12.0. There you can see my scores. Pretty respectable for a 6S. Of course, I did it after 12.0.1. This could have been when the phone was still optimizing itself, so okay, benefit of the doubt. I don't have any older ones on here. I think this was an old iOS. Yeah, that was on the betas as well. The betas performed extremely well on this phone, and now the final one, I don't know. Let's run one more, just for the sake of running a benchmark. So let's just do this, and I will come back. This will probably be the last thing I show on the video before I wrap things up. So just doing one Geekbench dropped my battery percentage 5%. Just ridiculous. Just things like that just really are irritating. Anyway, so let's see. Our last score was a 2459 with a 4519. So yeah, it was probably just optimization on the single core side of things. It was probably busy doing something when it first upgraded, so okay, whatever. So yeah, one thing I also wanted to compare was this game. This game used to launch quite a bit more quickly than it does now, and I'm not sure why, but I know this game is very intense for this phone. When this game first came out, the 6S was the flagship, so this game's quite old, and it still takes a while for it to load on a 6S. Of course, it's going to prove me wrong, but I just played it on my SE, so that's why that came up. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so yeah. It took a little bit of time. Not as bad as I was expecting it to, because sometimes it takes way longer to launch. So that was pretty good. Look at that. It drained even more. It's still draining. See, this is the kind of baloney that I've been dealing with. It's just stupid things like that. See, now it's draining really quickly, and the phone's not even under load right now. See, I'll even go in and close the game. It's exhibiting its behavior right now, where it just drains so quickly within a short amount of time. And again, what am I doing with the phone? So it's only been like 1 minute and 40 seconds on this particular clip, and it's drained over 6%, I think, maybe even longer. So yeah, just stupid things like this that make me want to upgrade, or at least get the battery replaced again, because it's irritating having to deal with this. So anyway, so that's about it for now. I'm going to probably go ahead again and wrap this video up. So what do I think about the iPhone 6s, just to kind of answer one last question? I think it's a pretty solid phone nowadays if you can find it used and obviously have a good battery. Find one with a TSMC A9. I think the SE overall would be a better value, but if you had to get one of these things, I'd say if you can get a Plus, so you get the better battery life. But if not, this isn't a bad phone. It'll get you by. I wouldn't recommend it for a daily driver coming into 2019, just because this is really starting to show its age now, especially in the battery life department. It's really starting to show its age. It can still hold its own amidst the mid-range phones, I think. I'm trying to figure out the words. But it's by no means any more of a flagship than it was 3 years ago. So it's not really going to hold up itself. And besides, the newer phones are just a hell of a lot more powerful, especially the iPhone 8, the 8 Plus, the 10, and especially coming into the 10R and the 10S and 10S Max and those devices. Yeah, they're just way more powerful than this thing will ever be. This was probably the first phone that really significantly made the iPhone perform a lot better. But, you know, obviously it's 3 years now, so it's not really going to show itself any better now than it was back then. So, yeah. So anyway, I think that's it for now. I don't have anything else really to say, so I think we'll just go ahead and end the video here. So, thank you all for watching, and if I do get a new phone, I will let you know, probably give you a little video of it, and until next time, guys, see you later.